Welcome to Roles and Responsibilities within the Federal Aid Process Training module of the Public Local Agencies Certification Training. The Federal Aid Program is a complex process and requires input and support from various entities. These entities include Federal Highway Administration or FHWA, Caltrans, and local public agencies. In addition, the Metropolitan Planning Organizations, Regional Transportation Planning Agencies, County Transportation Commissions and the California Transportation Commission or CTC have roles in the federal aid process. FHWA is the federal agency most typically involved in transportation projects undertaken with federal funding. FHWA has the authority and responsibility for implementing and monitoring federal laws, regulations, and executive orders affecting federal programs. FHWA is involved according to these responsibilities and the delegations in the Stewardship and Oversight Agreement. The FHWA Caltrans Stewardship and Oversight Agreement defines roles and responsibilities, outlines authorities, and assures accountability in effectively and efficiently managing program and project delivery of the federal aid program. Caltrans is responsible and accountable to FHWA for administering the implementation of the federal aid programs and projects in accordance with laws, regulations, and policies that govern the federal aid program. Caltrans responsibilities are divided into three areas: policy and procedures, program management, and project implementation. Caltrans establishes uniform policy and procedures to assist public local agencies in meeting the program requirements for implementing their projects. Caltrans, in collaboration with FHWA, interprets federal and state laws, rules and regulations, and provides guidance in the form of manuals and training to assist the local public agencies in planning, constructing, and maintaining their transportation system. Each specific local assistance program provides funding which requires distribution, management, and oversight control to ensure that the funds are expended in accordance with the program requirements and that allocations and budget authority are not exceeded. Caltrans distributes fund allocations to the Metropolitan Planning Organizations, Regional Transportation Planning Agencies, cities, counties, and others as specified by law. Once the distributions are established, Caltrans provides program guidance for their expenditure. Some programs may require annual or periodic project application and selection to establish eligibility lists. Caltrans also monitor project implementation to ensure that the projects are implemented in a timely manner to achieve program goals. Some major federal aid steps delegated by FHWA to Caltrans cannot be further delegated to the public local agency level and remain Caltrans' responsibility. Caltrans ensures projects are included in the Federal Statewide Improvement Program and Federal Transportation Improvement Program. Public local agencies have the primary responsibility for implementing the specific projects which carry out the federal aid programs. The public local agency is responsible for the conception, planning, programming, environmental investigations, design, right-of-way, construction, and maintenance of the projects on their local transportation system. The public local agency must ensure that its staff members, consultants, and contractors comply with the applicable state and federal laws, regulations and procedures in developing and constructing its projects. Federal regulations require the public local agencies to designate a full-time public employee, not a contractor or consultant, in responsible charge for each project. The role of the responsible charge is to ensure that the work delivered under contract is complete, accurate, and consistent with the terms, conditions, and specifications of the contract. The responsible charge must be employed directly by the public local agency directly receiving federal funds. A consultant cannot be designated as the responsible charge of a project. The responsibilities of the responsible charge may be shared among a number of public employees. A public employee may be the responsible charge of several projects. The regulations are silent about engineering credentials, thus the public local agency's employee in responsible charge need not be an engineer. The project engineer may be either a public local agency employee or consultant retained by the public local agency. The project engineer must be a professional engineer registered to practice in California. Depending on the type of work, the project engineer typically is a licensed civil engineer, electrical engineer, or landscape architect. The project engineer will certify the public local agency's plans, specification and estimate packages have been designed and prepared in accordance with Caltrans Local Assistance Procedures Manual. Any necessary design decisions have been approved by the Public Works Director or his/her designee. The certification must also acknowledge that review of the plan specification and estimate package will not be performed by Caltrans. The public local agency accepts responsibility for compliance with applicable design standards, Title 23 of the United States Code, and other applicable federal requirements. The public local agency must designate staff to prepare, certify, and track invoices to be submitted to Caltrans for reimbursement. The public local agency invoicing staff must be familiar with federal funding process through Caltrans Local Assistance Office, particularly invoicing procedures described in Chapter 5, Invoicing, of the Caltrans Local Assistance Procedures Manual. The public local agency shall designate qualified staff or retain consultants to perform the technical work and subsequent review, and certify that all the National Environmental Policy Act and the California Environmental Quality Act requirements have been met. The public local agency environmental staff or consultants shall meet minimum experience and training set forth in Chapter 6, Environmental Procedures, of the Caltrans Local Assistance Procedures Manual. The public local agency must designate a Title VI, Civil Rights Act of 1964, coordinator to ensure that no person shall, on the ground of race, color, and national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subject to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. The Title VI coordinator must have easy access to the head of the agency and be publicly identified. Any public local agency that employs 50 or more persons is required to designate an American with Disabilities Act coordinator, who is responsible for coordinating the efforts of the public local agency to comply with American with Disabilities Act requirements, including investigation of complaints. The public local agency must make available to the public the name and contact information including mailing address, telephone number, email address, etc. of its designated American with Disabilities Act coordinator per 28 CFR 35.107a. Public local agency recipients of federal financial assistance must comply with all the elements of 49 CFR 26 entitled Participation by Disadvantaged Business Enterprises in Department of Transportation financial assistance programs. These provisions apply to all federal aid transportation projects. The public local agency must designate a disadvantaged business enterprises liaison officer, accountable to the chief executive officer of the public local agency, to administer the Caltrans Disadvantaged Business Enterprises program as it pertains to public local agencies. The public local agency shall designate qualified staff or retain consultants to perform right-of-way technical work and subsequent review, and certify that all Uniform Relocation Act requirements have been met. The public local agency's right-of-way staff or consultants must obtain qualification certification from Caltrans right-of-way staff in advance of performing and right-of-way activities. The public local agency's contract administrator is responsible for ensuring the quality of consultant products and services. The contract administrator is appointed as soon as the need for consultant services is identified. The public local agency's contract administrator is involved throughout the development of the selection process and the contract provisions, and in the administration of the consultant's work. The contract administrator must be a qualified public local agency's employee or have staff that is qualified to ensure the consultant's work is complete, accurate, and consistent with the terms and conditions of the consultant contract. On federal aid contracts, the contract administrator or staff members must be a full-time employee and familiar with the work to be contracted out and the standards to be used. The contract administrator must also abide by the laws, regulations, and policies required as part of accepting federal or state funding for their projects. Non-compliance with the laws, regulations, and policies may result in loss of project funding. The public local agencies must designate a qualified engineer who is empowered to administer the construction contract, known as the resident engineer. For projects off the state highway system, the resident engineer is not required to be a licensed professional engineer. However, if not licensed, the resident engineer must be working under the supervision of a licensed professional engineer. The public local agencies must furnish sufficient qualified support staff to assist the resident engineer in, but not limited to, construction surveys, soils and foundation tests, measurement and computation of quantities, testing of construction materials, checking shop drawings, and preparation of progress payments and reports. Additional resident engineer responsibilities include the preparation of change orders, as-built drawings, uniform filing of contract documentation, contract time tracking, labor compliance, disadvantaged business enterprises compliance, and other inspection and staff services necessary to assure that the construction contract administration is being performed in accordance with the project plans and specifications, state and federal laws, and with the local assistance procedures. Manual. For projects with structures, a structures representative may be necessary. The public local agencies may employ a consultant to provide construction engineering services such as resident engineers, inspectors, lab testers, or surveyors. Metropolitan planning organizations, regional transportation planning agencies, and county transportation commissions have broad transportation planning duties and responsibility for programming most projects using federal aid or state allocations from the various programs. These organizations are responsible for providing each public local agency with their application rules, procedures, and timelines. They are responsible for providing the public local agencies with results of the decisions about its projects and the agency, CTC, and federal approval dates. The public local agencies must work closely with these organizations to ensure that its projects are placed in the appropriate transportation improvement program with the correct funds in the proper fiscal years. Federal funds and many state funds cannot be obtained without this programming step. The California Transportation Commission or CTC has programming and fund allocation responsibility for some federal aid and state-funded programs used for local assistance projects. It is the public local agency's responsibility to submit a request for allocation on time per the CTC preparation schedule. For programming, the CTC currently selects Federal State Transportation Improvement Program and Active Transportation Program projects. When a project is ready for implementation, the CTC must vote to allocate funding to the project. Now you have completed the roles and responsibilities within the Federal Aid Process Training module. Please click Next to complete the quiz for this module.